a lifelong urge to see beyond things, perceive them as they are. Not just the body, but the soul, a landscape. Mountains sturdy and steady, crowned with pride and arrogance, rulers of earth and sky, forbidden to shake, tremble, and perhaps cry. Wounded and carved with scars of convenience, yet standing tall and stiff, escaping gestures and movements, not crumbling, not falling, not sliding away onto different spaces, silent and bearing the thwacks of the world, just like my grandfather, father, uncles. Loudly justifying masculinity with the sight of a black and white world. Fractured perspectives have sharp edges, whose pricks could puncture generations to come and generations to go. They said the mountain is a man and the river is a woman. And I remember all those times that their immutable words and splintered perspectives wounded the home, the mothers, the daughters, and even themselves. And then the journey began. Spring arrived relentlessly with colors that cannot be unseen and questions that cannot be undone. How to be a man? Careless of the sun, the glittering snow, the melting away, transforming and shifting from white to gold to earth, the cleansing of a black and white world. Disruptions of all that is mighty and glorious, dripping away into the enormous profundity of a river, gushing out and spilling through edges, corners, and centers, prolonging itself from crunchy snow to ambiguous curvatures to lucid infinity. But what about those times when my father refused to be fragile? So I had tried to scrap out my leftovers of tenderness. What about those times when he violently denied accountability? So I had tried to rush out of the door, hold on to my tears, tightly grappling on to my masculinity, shoving my heart into its wide expanse of a swallow, which hoped it could show the world that I am indeed a man, just like the mountain, as they said. What about those times when I left the room, the space, the land, the relationships, like a wounded mountain that refuses to shudder when passions are gained and sentiments lost? And perhaps for a trans boy like me, this was a precious gem to hold on to, because I wondered if masculinity faltered and got displaced. A so-called imperial strength that sustained my sense of self, an Elysian light so bright that perhaps the folds on my body could disappear. A virile power that could possibly persuade the world that I really am a man. But often there was that voice, wandering frivolously through my veins, asking again and again if I am man enough. Asking again and again if I was man enough. And there it was, the brutal measures defined by my ancestors that could cripple generations to come and generations to go. Spring settled in with the sweetest birds of songs that cannot be unheard and questions that cannot be undone. Questions that grew bigger and larger that my masculinity could contain. Questions that erupted from things learned and unlearned, soon to open up a seed that held my lifelong urge to see beyond things, perceive them as they are. So I looked away from the black and white world, inhabited by my father, my grandfather, and my uncles. And as the seed cracked open to break out of the earth, stretching it to new horizons, to limits between the unknown and the unknown, sometimes drifting it away from itself, sometimes wrapping it around itself, soothing the edges, healing the wounds from false egos, moving it around from here to there, carving out new forms and narratives onto this evolved landscape, when maybe by mistake a small drop of tear fell upon the half-blossomed red flower peeping through the green grass, when masculinity came undone. I feared some earth-shattering catastrophe, but nothing really changed. But then, the tenderness of that half-blossomed red flower looked back at me, and something had changed. A moment flew into my room from the long past, a moment restrained by masculinity. When asking for forgiveness could have changed lives, healed wounds, and perhaps created a novel space for love. But masculinity turned away, shut the doors, and meaningful words remained in its prison. Fractured perspectives have sharp edges, whose breaks could puncture generations to come and generations to go. Spring is here with the joviality of held hands walking down the lane that can no more be unremembered or unwished, and the hollow voice of being enough has gone quieter. And I am still a man, like a mountain tender with its flowers, accommodating like the river it holds, compassionate to allow the passage of travel, fragile on bad days when land and rocks slide away onto volatile topographies. And I'm still a man, like a river that nurtures and nourishes the earth, that spreads out its arms, bringing in harvest and joys, that gushes out with immense power when the sky flicks its body. And I'm still a man with abundant pride and arrogance of traitorous egos, wandering in and out of crevices where masculinity, femininity meander, not in isolation, but in relation, sharing dreams and holding hands, like springs with laughter and joys, carrying the world through me. Like when the ocean cradles the river carries the mountain bears the sky embodies the heavens pervade the landscape of our soul. And I'm still a man in a rainbow world, liberated from the burden of proof. A man, tender, delicate, and carelessly put together from the flakes of our sliding, slipping, falling masculinity. Thank you.